Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we're going to continue on our journey through setting up your Synology NAS perfectly the very first time. And today we're going to focus on multimedia. I mentioned in a previous video how important backups are and how a lot of users will buy a Synology NAS for backup purposes only, but there is another huge contingent of users that buy a Synology NAS for multimedia. The decades upon decades of photos, music and video they've accrued over the years, and today we're going to be showing you the best ways to utilize that data, the best ways to index that data, and dipping into the primary applications for each of those multimedia services on your system and get the very most from them on your device. But a quick disclaimer off the bat, this isn't something I've just started talking about on the channel. I've made many videos detailing individual apps and services on the Synology platform. I've then compared some premium level platforms such as MB and Plex Media Server, comparing them against Synology's own applications and services, and indeed alongside articles where we've directly compared them in terms of pricing and feature set. We've also provided additional videos that focus on specific apps and services, something I'm going to be talking about later on, and how they run within the Synology ecosystem. The other thing I'm going to touch on, some of you that have come to this video wondering if we're going to be including coverage of Plex Media Server, that's going to be its own standalone video, because I think there are arguably more users that are going to get a Synology NAS specifically to run Plex than any other multimedia utility. So I think that needs to have its own dedicated video where I can really deep dive into that. So if you come for Plex, look along the bottom of the right hand side of the screen, and hopefully the Plex video for 2024 has already gone live. Otherwise it'll be with you in the next week or so. But let's go straight in. So different kinds of multimedia users. It's going to come down to, one, if you're going to be accessing the media locally or externally, and also the methodology and the complexity you want of accessing the media. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're accessing on the local area network, maybe you've got an intelligent console, a media streaming box, maybe with something like Kodi, or a first-party media server app, media streaming app built in. Or perhaps you've got a smart TV that's already got network multimedia support that can either be recognized as DLNA, Digital Living Network Alliance device, which allows the system to communicate on a very basic level with network devices. Alternatively, you can utilize a system known as UPnP, Universal Plug and Play. These allow you to enjoy media very easily and without complexity of passwords and authentication, but at the same time access low-level security files. So if you're going to be utilizing that methodology on your system, it's arguable the best app you're going to find is an app called Media Server on the Synology NAS system. Media Server is ultimately which allows certain subset and pre-selected folders to be accessible via mobile devices, streaming boxes, and more. Now, it's available in the package center, very easy to find. It's one of the earliest applications you will find. If you list by alphabetically, it will appear. We will be talking about indexing later on as well. But the reason I wanted to bring up Multimedia Server first is Multimedia Server actually allows you to control its own indexing first. What do I mean by that? Well, when you open up the application, as you can see here on screen, via your Synology NAS in the web browser, you can see some low-level options there. So, for example, you can bond to a specific network physical port on the system if you choose there. You can also change some of the styling of the DLNA menu. A lot of that to do with that can be tailored a little bit more to the intended streaming client device. But I will say this isn't something that's been heavily implemented onto Media Server. Is still quite a basic application there. If you're having difficulty communicating with the device, you can change some of the opening kind of reporting that the system does onto the network to let other devices know it's there. And when it comes to the browsing settings there, you can change how you want some file types displayed. If some of them are utilizing quite complex or dense multimedia, such as raw photography, you can change some of those images to be displayed in a lower resolution fashion, or you can make sure that it's always going to be high def, but that will be something you're going to have to tailor your network communication with, and particularly if you're using wireless devices and you're far away from a wireless central hub, such as using an Amazon Fire TV with a DLNA or UPnP streaming service. that may be problematic for you there. Again, it's also worth mentioning, as you can see, you can integrate some other features of, say, the internet radio services of audio station and the video station services to be brought in to the multimedia server app here for the media server. But I will say, again, if you're already going down the road of using some of those apps, I would stay with them. And also, and I'll touch on this in more detail later on, Synology does provide a lot of apps for the likes of Apple TV, for Amazon's own Fire TV there, and even Google's TV services as well. So there are options out there to use tailored first-party apps. Synology is one of the, I would argue, more dedicated platforms for that. So going with the Synology tends to mean that alongside all the mobile applications, you will find there's quite a lot of applications on numerous third-party app centers that they do support quite regularly there. Now, with regards to compatibility there, you can change or limit some of the compatibility. So, for example, those of you that are going into a Synology for dense audio, FLAC files, MP4A, the dense stuff, a lot of that will be disabled by default. The reason being it is just such dense media to both crawl and stream that all too often they will just disable that on the server side, even if the client side supports it. Luckily, you can enable that feature, and thanks to that audio conversion, it will mean the Synology will reshape the file for you using its own hardware resources. More on that later with transcoding. And it will allow the denser file to be streamable on the destination audio device there. Something that without, in some cases, the server changing the file and converting the file, it's just simply not going to be possible for these systems that run DLNA or UPnP streaming services to enjoy the media, but they don't have the sufficient storage or RAM really, or just buffer zone to take these large files and host them for playback on that side. So it's nice that the server side has that option there, and it's very easy to configure to your needs within the options. Now, as simple as all that sounds for streaming the media, it's worth highlighting that streaming we just talked about, you don't want to stream everything. You don't care about, a PDF that you downloaded of a bank statement in 2021. You don't want to watch that on your TV. You want to make sure that the directories that are being streamed from your Synology NAS onto your multimedia devices, one, only utilize your multimedia, two, correctly establish photos in photos, videos in videos, and music in music to avoid any duplication or confliction. And lastly, you want to make sure that moving forward, if you add more media later on, that you don't have to manually start telling the system you did it. Now, what I just described there is called indexing. And most systems, from hard drives to SSDs, do this all the time. It's ultimately the system reminding itself and knowing and keeping and updating the central record where data lives. Where it moves one step forward in the context of this video is we want to define this to multimedia, and therefore the multimedia apps. Now, if you go into the control panel, head to the bottom, you've got a tab marked Indexing Services. Click that option, and in here you can tell the system where data lives. Now, I will talk about this later on with Synology Photos, but this is not an all-encompassing rule. But we can see here that we have got a folder called /music, a folder called /photos, and another folder called /video. So if we go into File Station there, we can see all of those folders here on the system. Now, chances are, on a very basic level, the majority of users are going to move their media into those folders. So if you've got videos, box sets, TV shows, movies, you're going to put them in that folder. Same goes if you're going to be putting photos into photo folders. It's as simple as that. But what if you don't? What if you've got prerequisite and already pre-created folders that you already use for media? For example, in File Station here, I've got a folder deep within the music folder here that's art. Now, what we can do is we can head into the index folder option. We know there's going to be photos in there, so we can select create, and then from there give ourselves our new folder within the system, find the folder we've got there, go in, and we can add that new directory. We can also say whether it's got photos, video, or music. And once we add that folder, it's now available to the rest of those. And remember, if you make a mistake or you want to add more caveats, you can go into a pre-existing folder you've created, click edit, and change some of those parameters. Go into subfolders. Say that some of the media in there, for example, if you're uploading from your phone, you might have some videos in there as well. So it's nice to have that level of clarity and that level of indexing control at this level. But once again, when we get onto Synology Photos, there is an exception to the rule. And the same goes with conversions. If you're applying some of those settings for converting files, video into lower density and lower compression exhaustive formats, or audio into better playable media, I hate seagulls, then you can set conversions to happen prerequisite on the system and even on a time frame if you like. But bear in mind, every time you do that, you are creating duplicate files if you're going to be using the scheduled settings. So bear that in mind. It can be really problematic. And later on, as there is no dedicated, at least at the time of recording, a dedicated deduplication app that removes duplicate files but maintains the record so the system knows that single file is in multiple location. As there is no smooth GUI for a user to do that, I don't really recommend conversion by schedule unless you've got plenty of space and you don't mind sorting through duplicates down the line. Now, the last thing, before we move on to the actual applications and services and how to set them up, I do think it's worth highlighting that you should go into the package center and find an application. Let's find it here, because we may have gone away. The Advanced Media Extension. Now, up until about DSM 7, a lot of users were not recommended this app. Now, in more recent versions of Synology's DSM platform, when you try to install one of the media apps, it does go out of its way to highlight this tool to you. Now, you will need to create a Synology account in order to do this. If you try to install it, what will happen is it will invite you to go ahead and, much like remote access services, ask you to create a Synology account, and then from that Synology account you'll be able to add this media extension. What this does is add, at least give permission for the system to be able to run certain compression techniques. Now, one of those is highly efficient video codec, or HEVC. HEVC is a more efficient and more powerful compression technique. The compression technique in question is watching Avatar in 4K at the cinema and compressing it into something that you can put on a USB in your pocket. More efficient techniques such as HEVC, otherwise known as H.265, came around in the last few years, have grown in popularity. The problem is, this is a licensed compression technique. Ones before it were largely open source and public use. But HEVC, as it was created by a consortium of multimedia organizations, it is license-led, and a lot of hardware that you buy, not just Synology, but lots out there, do not arrive with this license, as it's provided on an on-license purpose. But if you create the Synology account will allow you to add this advanced media extension and allow playback of HEVC, along with a few other extensions as well. The result is, it will result in smoother playback, or at the very least, if you are running a TV, a smartphone, whatever, that can't play a certain HEVC file and other compression techniques, it will allow the system to convert that file using hardware transcoding, something we'll talk about more in the Plex video, on your system to use your hardware as good as possible. So regardless of whether you think you're going to need an HEVC supported codec on your system, I nevertheless recommend to install that, as you will see those benefits later on if you upgrade to that denser format media. So let's now start with audio. Those of you that are going to be utilizing a Synology NAS to enjoy your decades of audio media, from albums from the 90s to particularly complex and deep audio recordings and podcasts, you're going to need to use Audio Station. All of the applications I'm going to talk about today are readily accessible from the Synology App Center, and you can find them all in there. But with Audio Station, at least on the Synology server side via the web browser, is a very limited tool. It's only when you move outside of the bounds of this GUI that you can really make the most of it. What do I mean by that? Well, anyone that, the old Winamp days and more, are going to be familiar with this rather blocky layout. They have updated it a little bit for the Synology design, but nonetheless, it does look a little dated. All of our music's in there. We've already indexed the music folder, so all of these albums are all readily accessible in here. And when you try to play a file, and we'll make sure the music's down, we can go ahead, go into go by album, find ourselves an album there, and play a song. We can play it within the web browser, absolutely fine. It will just trundle along there in the background. We've got information, and depending on the files and the complexity you've got, and whether if you go into a file, for example, video game music here, dip in, if there is any data already locked in with the metadata, such as albums and more, it will crawl that metadata and supply all of that data directly to the interface for Audio Station. But you probably won't get a lot of that thumbnail data, and unlike Video Station, which has an option to connect with the movie database, something more on that later on, there is less options like that built into Audio Station. That said, there is still plenty of options for configuration. You've got the filtration there on the left that allows you to go through that stuff, adding internet radio stations as well. Again, you can find those online quite easily with the correct URL and immediately bolt those on. Same goes, if you want to go into the settings menu there, you can add lyric options with Lyrics Wiki. Again, no verification, no further login required there. You can just add that as a feature and it will crawl the relevant databases to get the lyrics for your music very easily. If you have an outstanding iTunes record for a lot of your music history, you can import it there. But remember, a lot of that has changed in recent years. And also, as you can see, not only can you have access to the music on the system thanks to those index folders we went through earlier on, but also you can choose which music can be shared outside of just your own user account. More on that in the photo section later, but just bear in mind that music in this system, you may be limiting some of the folders that can be accessed. Remember in part 2 when we talked about assigning user accounts and assigning them to certain utilities so that certain devices don't have too much power. You can go down that road there, or with a primary account you can actually share some of that multimedia, and there is also the options later on that will allow users to upload their own music onto an existing NAS interface and add to an existing music collection. More on that later on. But as you can see, you can choose whether you want to be able to allow users to download the music from within their system. We'll get onto Alexa services in just a moment, and choosing whether you want that media and also the diction and changes that you've made within Audio Station to be applicable to the DLNA media service from earlier can be applied. The same goes for that audio conversions into DLNA. We've already talked about the conversion of these files on the fly using system hardware within the media server for DLNA and UPnP. This just applies those same settings and that same LAN bonding here to Audio Station. Now remember, when you are accessing this media on Audio Station, chances are you're doing it on smart home devices, you're doing it on your mobile phones, you're doing it on sound systems there, and I think a lot of users these days are now using smart home devices. Now, I referred earlier on to a video like this one where we were showing how to use, but way 6 years ago, how to command your Amazon Alexa to play the music from your Synology NAS. Now that since this video was made, certain third-party alternatives like the My Media application have arisen to allow users to do this. However, Synology's own Audio Station app, even if the reviews for it sometimes take something of a kicking, I have to say, Synology themselves are still one of the very few NAS platforms, indeed they might be the only one still, that have got their own app that works within the Amazon Skill Center to ask aloud verbally to have your music played from the NAS. And if you want to enable that feature, you've got to use that option there, but make sure you allow an external access point onto the Synology NAS, as when you are asking the Amazon Alexa, it's not immediately communicating via the LAN. It's actually bouncing from the third-party server there and the first party or the access point there. So bear that in mind. But nonetheless, that is the audio capabilities of streaming from your Synology NAS for all of the dense audio, but also just your standard sound albums. And remember, you've got media server with that DLNA and UPnP support there, or you can install the application directly from Synology's website for your iPhone, for Android and more, to stream that media via that tailored application and enjoy some of the scraped metadata benefits as well. Now next up we move on to videos. Now Video Station is an application that, although I still think it is one of the best NAS video streaming applications out there, and probably one of the closest out there to challenge Plex Media Server. I said as much in my videos. It still has to be said that Video Station is not perfect, and I think Synology could stand to double down a little bit and improve some of its features. As you can already see here, I've added already a bunch of albums for media on this NAS. We've got them here on the left, but there's no metadata, there's no thumbnails. We'll get onto that in just a moment. But nonetheless, when you do go into Video Station, again, accessible either via the web browser here for maintenance, or you can download applications for Amazon Fire TV if you choose. There's also apps for Android services, Google services as well. There are lots out there. This allows you to enjoy this media from the comfort of your sofa. Indeed, we did Video Station tests and DS video tests here using a NAS a little while ago, running on a Realtek ARM processor, and did do very, very well there. Now, Video Station, it utilizes the indexing that we talked about earlier on within the control panel, so we already know that this is already having access to our video. However, that just grants Video Station not only access, but also just tells it that's vaguely where the media is. But that's not good enough. What you also want is to be able to differentiate movies, TV shows, home recordings, and more. What you need to do is press the plus symbol up here. From there, give the folder a name. So we could call this one test, but you're going to be calling it movies or whatever. You can say here whether it's movies, TV shows, or others. So if we call this one home movies, while the seagulls go absolutely bananas above me. From there, we can say that it's other. From there, say whether we want to share it or keep it limited. From there, click OK, and you can see our home movies folder here on the left. From there, click the plus symbol. Now we say where on the NAS it can access it. That seagull is going bananas. Then we choose where we want it to share that media. So for example, in the video folders here, we could select one of these folders, dig in as deep as we want, and click select. If the folder is already being used by another subdirectory, it won't allow you to double down on that, which is a nice handy extra. From there, and we'll get to the idea of video info later on, we can go ahead and click OK. But again, I've already specified this, but if you're selecting a new folder, that should be fine for you. Now, if we go into the settings at the top, and we'll get to the most all-powerful important one to do with metadata in a moment, we can look at some of those options. So, for example, depending on how you want the media to be portrayed, or if you want subtitles to be crawled, or you want to convert existing formats into alternative ones for things like subtitles or some of the codec, you can change a lot of those settings here within these options here. Useful to your own setup. The advanced tab here gives us a little bit more deep stuff, not only digging down further into the support of some of those options we just looked at there, but also just generally how much of this application of this media conversion and changing is applicable to those third-party services and when you're streaming to those third-party client devices with the Synology apps. Now, we could go through some of these options with regards to which account holders have got access to the media. Bear in mind a lot of these options need to be configured within the control panel and within the user and group services there. But the one that we really care about the most is the video plugin here. This is what turns your Video Station layout into an equivalent like Plex Media Server. Now, as you can see, I've got a TV show tab and I've got a movies tab. So in the Movies tab, we can choose to have access to the movie database. The movie database allows your NAS to look at all the media you've got, the TV shows and the movies, and then it goes to the movie database and rips thumbnail information, casting information, actors, the works. It transforms your old data into Plex almost, or turn your personal NAS with your decades of media into your very own Netflix. What you need to do is go to the movie database, which you can find, I've got the tab here somewhere, the movie database. From the movie database, you need to create a completely free account. Again, you'll log in there. And when you log into the movie database, head down to where it says API. From API, you'll be able to generate an automatic key. That key you then need to head into and enter this field. Once you've entered that key you can now access the movie database and crawl that metadata. So as you can see right now, I'm going to add the crawling of metadata to this system. I'm going to click OK. Then we can start indexing our folders once again. So we go into those settings menu again. Again, you can get there from the cog at the top. Find the folder in question. So in my case, it would be the movies folder. Then select that option there. And now we want to re-index that folder. The same goes for our TV folder here. We select that folder there. We select OK. And it will begin indexing our media within those folders. Now you may have noticed this folder here. That's because it's an erroneous folder. If you want to change these options, select there, select the folder. If you want to change it, click select, find where you want it to go to. In this case, movies. I want it to go to TV shows. Click select. And again, we've already set up video info. We've already created a source for that. Click OK, and now we're going to start indexing the movie folder and our TV shows folder. If we come out of this option here, go back into the movies folder, and now we've already started crawling media data. We've gone from having no information to now having information about the actors and actresses within our presentation and the movies themselves having all of that metadata. And that metadata is effective externally. So if you're using the mobile application for iOS or Android, if you're using some of the desktop multimedia devices you may have in your front room, then that metadata is carried over. That's how you end up turning your Synology NAS into your very own Netflix there. When you're playing files, and again, we're not going to use this file here because of fun YouTube policies, but if we go into our test files here and we play ourselves a nice Billy Basic file, we'll go for this one here. Playing that file, you can see it's very pixelated right now because right now we are using conversion settings here. We're converting to high quality, and that is to do with HEVC support being disabled currently on the system. But again, you can configure a lot of those options. It's all fairly straightforward stuff, but just bear in mind, as you can see at the top left, we are using an HEVC file and we've not assigned HEVC support. But it's worth highlighting, if we close that down and we go into the Media Resource Manager, that while we're running tests like this, it's going to use more CPU power. So it's really important that you go ahead and not only install that media application add-on there, the media extension, but you actually enable it as well. Just bear that in mind, and also make sure that your NAS has got hardware transcoding in order to take advantage of those extra oomph and support of HEVC. Finally, for those of you that have got family members that will be accessing the media on the device, you can set up parental controls pretty straightforwardly on the system, but it works at its best if you're utilizing that crawled metadata from the movie database. So once you've got that plugin in place, not only will it download all of the information with regards to thumbnails and casting information and descriptions, it will also download the details surrounding age certification, who can watch it, and more. So you can see that's rated R there at the top right if my face wasn't totally in the way. Now, if we head back into the settings options there, what we can do in the parental controls is add a new rule here. So remember, once again, when I said about creating individual users within the control panel, one of the reasons you would do this for multimedia is so that, say, this user here, we would select a user. We would then say for movies that it has to be minimum this rating. So if it is higher than that rating, we can make sure that certain users can't access it. So just make sure, for those more vulnerable, or if you've got young kids in the house, create a new sub-user account for them within the settings menu. And once you've created that sub-access account for them, just make sure that that access account has got limited access to certain certified material on your system. You can manually apply that if you choose, or if you wish, you can apply a PIN where if you create a main account that's used for all the multimedia devices, you can add that 4-digit PIN and therefore unlock material if you have that PIN number. And you can apply that to every single directory that you create on Video Station. Finally, we can make our way into photography. Now, Synology used to have several different photo applications. It had Synology Moments, it had Synology Photo Station, and it had Synology Photos. 3 apps running across different versions of DSM, and eventually Synology consolidated all of them into a single tool known as Synology Photos. Synology Photos, let's go into the personal space there, break it into folders, is a singular photo management tool there with lots of little bells and whistles that have been added over time, as well as AI assisted categorization and clarification services. Again, if you want low-level stuff, you can use the Media Center tool to stream your photos, but remember, the density of those photos on your streaming network may be problematic. Also, you'll lose out on a lot of the scraped metadata advantages. What do I mean by that? Well, every photo you take with modern smartphones these days also attaches a whole heap of metadata. That metadata can contain the camera that took the photo, the aperture, the lens, the resolution, also geolocational data. All of that information is ripe to turn your albums that have been created over the many years into much more intelligent, bespoke albums. And thanks to the system crawling that metadata combined with the AI support, you have got some real capabilities to create an impressive photo collection, server and backup for your needs. As mentioned earlier on, in the download section, there are all manner of applications to back up your photos from your mobile devices and your tablets and more, and desktop devices onto the Synology NAS, and we've made dedicated videos on the majority of them. But when it comes to Synology Photos' own GUI, it is still at its best managed via a web browser here. Now, earlier on I mentioned about indexing, didn't I? And I said how the system, when you use the indexing services, will tell the system where your media lives. However, in the case of Synology Photos, it is a much more rigid application. So as you can see here, I've already told the system I have photos in the album /photos. But Synology Photos, it treats that folder like it's shared photos. This is a shared space, largely considered non-priority and open to everyone. Whereas when it comes to the main Synology Photos directory, you have to go into the Homes album here, and there's a new folder called Photos here. So the Home album and then Photos next to Synology Drive. And this is where Synology Photos crawls, stores and implements photo data there. If you do not put your photo data into either the Photos album, which is again a shared space, or Home/Photos. If you don't put your photos in there, currently you can't use Synology Photos, because Synology Photos has this rigid system of keeping things efficient and smooth, but unfortunately that also means that it can't be too flexible without losing some of that stability and smoothness there. So when we look at Synology Photos, the main tab here at the top, we can filter through into whether we want to go via the calendar view, which has crawled all the metadata for timelines and put all that information there. And that applies to both GIFs and live photos too. Or you can switch to a folder view. But remember, that folder view is only crawling that album Home/Photos. Now, there's a tab here called Personal Space, and if you switch to Shared Space, now we can access the /Photos album. But again, we're still only accessing that singular album there in Photos. Now, by default, several apps and features and services of Synology Photos are not visible. Indeed, if you're following this guide at the same time as your newly set up Synology, you're probably asking me right now, why can't I see shared space? Where is that button here at the top left? Well, head into the profile icon here at the top and then go to settings. Indeed, I've just realized you're barely able to see that because my stupid face is in the way. Let's get rid of me for a moment there. If we go to the A here at the top right, select settings, and from here we're able to see that shared space, by default you probably see enable shared space. Click that button and it will enable the shared space there for you. But the other thing I implore you to enable, scroll down, is enable people album and enable subjects album. You need this if you want to utilize AI photo recognition. Otherwise, you're not really using one of the best features of Synology Photos, to use the AI. And also keep in mind that the AI in Synology Photos is not an external AI. Put myself back there on camera. The internal AI doesn't use any outside intervention, doesn't use any AI algorithm outside of the system. You can use AI photo recognition with a Synology NAS that has zero access to the internet. So once you've done that, if you've only just enabled those, make sure that you re-index all of your photos afterwards, as the system will automatically and periodically re-index. But if you need it to scan the AI, which is a little bit of a demanding process, make sure you push the system to do so once you've enabled those. Same goes for the share space. You can choose whether you want not only shared spaces to have access to that folder to upload photos automatically themselves, but also whether you want to enable AI photo recognition in the shared space as well, if you choose to. And the global settings there, the one we can be really interested in there is to do with file exclusions, because I know there's going to be some of you out there that are uploading horrifically big files, and as capable as Synology Photos is, and you can enable those conversions, some of you may not wish to upload RAW. You may not wish to upload the horrific size of some of these files. So you can add those extensions and exclude those from Synology Photos if you choose to. And if you want to go for those conversions to change, say, HEVC files from, say, an Apple platform to be more globally accessible and streamed from, you can change a lot of those default settings there very easily too. So if we go into the folder tab here at the top left, we can go into the main tab for AI photo recognition. If we go to people, the system is crawling all of the photos that you have uploaded, and the AI recognizes what faces look like. It then groups them together. So for example, here's a picture of me here at the top. So what I would do, I would put my name. And there you go. Now, every time a face or any photos are uploaded and that face is in that collection, it will automatically tag that name, Rob. But of course, some photos of me, like this one with me with stupid blue hair and sunglasses, doesn't look like me. So I can remind the system by typing that and merge these two accounts together. And there you go. Now it's combining those two search parameters. And the same goes when we crawl along and we look for other pictures. This one with my hand in my face, we can go ahead and put that one there. And it's learning more and more that that is me. So if we go ahead and start adding some more, so we start putting other people in. So we'll add that as Katie. We find another one of Katie looking slightly different, no doubt. That's her with a moustache on for some reason, but we're just going to go along with that. Go ahead, click merge, and there you go. We've now added those two people, and you can add lots more, and then over time you can keep adding more people, and it learns as it goes. But the other beautiful thing this does is, say for example, I want to find photos with Rob and Katie in them. I can go ahead, type Robbie, type Katie, click enter, and boom, it's finding all of those pictures of Robbie and Katie because we've told it what those labels are there. Same goes if we wanted to use that logic on the shared space. Had we enabled AI, that option would have been available to us there. And you can add that to multiple photos of people and keep the group as big as you want. Now, as useful as that sounds, it's worth highlighting you can take that logic a step further. If you go back into the main photo timeline, we go back to the personal space there and go to the main timeline. Say, for example, you wanted to create a new sub-album that's got photos of a specific nature. So say you wanted photos of specific people, you wanted them from a specific time, and you wanted them in a specific location. The scraping of that metadata will allow you to do that. So, for example, we go up here, and we'll have to disable my stupid face again. Move that down. If we go to the top left, we click that icon, we click the filter icon. We can choose with a number of different parameters. We'll say that we want just photos, not videos. We want pictures within 2019 and 2020. We can say that we want pictures that have got Katie and Rob in them. And we can choose where we want those photos to have been taken there. So, for example, I only want photos of us in the United Kingdom. And if we've rated the photos, we can add that. But now, as you can see, we've now created a super album here that has only got boxes that tick all of those. So what we can do now, if we choose to, is put a small box on one of those, and we can go ahead, add all of these albums together if we choose, all of those. And then from there, we can either choose to download all of those in a single zip file, we can choose to share them, and that sharing can be done with a specific tailored link, whether it can be done remotely or on the network only. That will require a Synology account, whether you want there to be a password, whether you want it to run out after a certain period of time. All of these things are configurable. You can even limit it to specific users on the system if you choose. But moreover, we leave it there. What you can do, and let's select some of those albums again. Select just a few there. You can also choose, if you wish, to create a brand new album. Call this a new album. Click OK, and not only will this now create a new sub-album here, as you can see, but it doesn't duplicate those photos. It keeps a record of where those photos are in the system, and just happens to have created this album, which allows us to share with the photos and albums that we've added into that lot there. It's that straightforward. Now, returning to the subject of AI, not only can we now do facial recognition and locational data, but on top of that, we can go for subjects. The AI photo recognition now breaks down into identifying things in photos. I didn't name these pictures cat or my cat. It managed to recognize by going through those photos where cats are in my photos. And yes, I've got a problem. Thanks for asking. So the result is now we can add those filters into the filter option that we showed earlier on. So with those quick photo filters there, we can use a lot of that extra information. You can configure quite a lot of this information right the way down to some of the aperture data as well in some of the cameras and photos you take. So for example, and again, I'm going to have to pick a photo at random. This might be too low res for us. Now this is a low res mobile copy. And again, a little side note while I think of it, if you are a user that has a huge amount of data on cloud services, what you can do is use a service known as Google Takeout. And Google Takeout will allow you to pull your information from existing Google services, such as Google Photos, and then those Google Photos you can then download without the JSON metadata, sadly, and store them on your NAS there. There is no way to bridge and synchronize with Google Photos, but you can with Google Drive, but you can't with Google Photos. This will at least allow you to download all of your history of data on the Android platform and then upload that data onto the Synology NAS there. But just bear in mind, you won't get the metadata that you want, sadly. But from there, you can see we've now used the AI to recognize the photos, and if we go into places, even more so, we can break down into the geolocational data that was locked in. And remember, the filters can be changed in a number of ways, and what we see, all of it nice and easily. Ultimately, the Synology Photos application does give you a lot of customization and control of your photo media, as well as breaking it down for you working professionals of photo media to create those shared spaces if you choose, or create individual folders. So you're a wedding photographer and you create a new shoot, you can create a shareable locked folder that's password protected, watermarked in some cases, depending on whether you integrate some of the extra apps and services coming in soon. And then finally, you can use services like Photo Request, where, for example, if you yourself are getting married, this is a great example, and you want lots of your guests to upload photos to you, and you don't want them to use services like WhatsApp or Facebook, which will decrease the size of those photos into low-res versions, you can create a Photo Request bucket that allows users to dump photos in full quality for you there. All of that managed from that single repository there, which you can then sort out later. But there you go. This has been setting up multimedia on your Synology NAS the very first time. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. As always, if you need further support, head to NAS Compares, where we not only make articles pretty much every other day, but we've got the NAS Builder to help you choose the right configuration for your network attached storage device to build from the ground up, and our free advice section there. The NAS Builder allows you to tail into a lot of different configuring options for what you need your NAS to do, as well as how many users, connection speeds, and more. Just click the Find a NAS button and it will build it for you and let you know the best system for your needs. You can even break it down into storage scale as well, with regards to the amount of storage you need, how many bays, redundancy, failover, and the amount of money you wish to spend there. Again, if you need free advice, we do recommend third-party community support forums along with first parties and certain subreddits, or if you can wait 3 to 5 working days, because we get quite hit heavily on here. Me and Eddie with the free advice section will help you out with your needs, or you can get expedited support via Ko-Fi. That expedited support will allow you to get an answer within 24 hours. Alternatively, you can contact us for a 1-hour Zoom consultation if you need, or you can go ahead and use our Ask.NAS Compares community support forum if you choose. There's lots for you to get on with. This isn't the last part in this series. We've still got loads to talk about. And as mentioned, we will be doing a dedicated Plex video for setting that up right the first time on your Synology. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.